Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. In this episode of the How to Play Chess series, we will be covering my absolute favourite piece on the board, and you can ask any of my friends and opponents. I love this piece. We are going to be covering the knight, or as my younger cousins would call it, the horse or the horsey. But we are training to be professionals here, so we're going to call it the knight with a K. Knight as in King Arthur, as in armies, as in really strong members of battles and of armies. So that's essentially where it comes from. So I'm really excited to cover this video today and this piece because I truly believe in the power of knights. And in many, many ways, I think that the knight is more powerful than the queen, depending on the situation. But I'll show you how and why in a moment. So in this board position, we have a pawn for both sides left. We have king, because you can't have a game without the kings, and I have two knights. So there are still two knights left, and it's important that we do that so I can show you exactly how the knight moves and why its position centrally is key to success. So you may have heard, for those of you that have heard a little bit about chess before, that the knight doesn't move like any other piece. The knight moves in an L shape, which is very, very different. And if you think about the queen, and what we've spoken previously about the queen, is that the queen can move in any direction. The rook can move vertically and horizontally, and the bishop can move diagonally. Because the knight can move in a completely different way, it really brings some intrigue and excitement to the game, because it means that the knight, when moving in an L shape, can attack pieces that cannot attack it back. Let me show you exactly what I mean. So if we look at white's knight here on G4, again you can see with the circles where it can move. An L shape essentially, not to confuse you, so I'll think about how I want to explain this. You essentially will move one square in one direction and then two squares in another. So let me show you exactly what I mean. So this knight here can move one square downwards in one direction and then move two squares to the left. This is now an L shape. So in total you have moved 1, 2, 3 squares in an L shape. You can also move upwards and then two to the left. You can go one here, one to the left and then upwards, and then finally one to the right and then upwards. You can actually go and capture capture that pawn. And that's exactly how knights capture pieces. So you would go one square in one direction. I won't confuse you, but if it's easier for you, you could actually go two in one direction and then one, but let's not do that. Just think of it as an L shape. And something that will really, really help you along your chess journey is the color of the square that the knight is currently on will always change. And I will show you this to prove it. So right now, the knight on G4 is currently on a light square. It will only be able to move to dark squares. So that's how you know you're moving the piece correctly, really. If you end up moving onto a light square, for example, you miscount and you actually end up here, you know you've made a mistake. Let's go to the other knight and I'll show you exactly what I mean. So ordinarily, the knight can move in any L shape it wants, provided there are no pieces in its way. So a great move could be F4, E5, C5, B4, attacking this knight here, but also under attack. However, in this position, white's knight on D3 cannot move. It can't actually move to B2, there's a pawn there, and it can't move to F2 because the king's there. It can, however, move all the way back and retreat, but not positionally the best move available. If I now switch to black, black again, just to give you a really thorough illustration, can move into the corner. It can move in an L shape back here, it can move here. There's just so many options, and every single time you are changing the color of the square. Again, finally, where was it? If I go here, this is fantastic. This knight is really, really well placed. If I count, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There are 8 fantastic available moves for this knight here on c6. So that works really, really well. What is the best move? Well, we will cover that in future. But if you look here, for example, this knight here, if it's on e5, it's now under attack by white's knights. They're now within reach of each other because black is now attacking in an L shape, but so is white. So again, the importance of having defenders and making sure that you have a really great, strong position is paramount. But let's just say, hypothetically, to show you exactly how it would work, let's go back to white to move. White has decided to attack the pawn on h6, which at the time may have felt like a good move, because you've now stopped white's only chance at promotion. But unfortunately, black has now, or I should say black is now in a position where it can attack the white knight and capture it, take it off the board, and we'll see who eventually wins this game. So overall, the knights are an incredibly, incredibly powerful piece, and we talked about the fact that they have a very, very good position because it can move in L shapes. But the one thing I haven't yet shown you is why I think they are more powerful than the queen. So we haven't shown, I should say I haven't shown you this just yet. Let me just add some pieces, maybe not a check. Bear with me one moment. So let's just say we have this position. I actually have the threat arrows here so you can see already. The white queen is under attack. Actually, let's move the king. King's in check. Okay, so white's queen is under attack because, as we've discussed extensively by this point, the knight moves in an L shape. So if white wants to take this knight off the board, it actually can't. She can't do anything because the queen can only move upwards, downwards, left, right, vertically, horizontally, and diagonally. The queen cannot capture and attack the knight back. That's why I think the knights are so fantastic, because in this particular position, the queen has to move away. That's ultimately the best decision here because the queen cannot attack back. By contrast, if the queens attack each other, then essentially the queens can attack each other. If two rooks are facing each other, then they're attacking each other. It's the same for all the other pieces, with the exception of the knight. And then the other thing I want to talk about is the power of jumping over pieces. In chess, we've talked about the fact that when there are pieces in your way, they limit you. You cannot move past them. The knight, however, can jump over them. So if I go all the way back to the starting position, ordinarily there would be pawns here, so let me just go and do that. What would normally happen in this position is you would have to move all of these pawns. We'll talk about pawns in a minute, but these pawns ultimately are blocking other pieces. So let's go and add the rest, shall we? Perfect. So the bishop cannot move. The bishop on f8 is trapped. The pawns need to move forward in order for it to move. Exactly the same thing with the rook on h8. Until it has room, it cannot move. And the very last thing we'll cover in this video, as excited as I am to talk about the knight here can jump over its own pieces. It can jump right here onto h6, and it can move onto f6. So unlike most of the other major pieces, the knight can make moves very early on in the game, dominate the center with the way that it moves in L shapes, and it can even attack key pieces like the queen, the rook, and the bishop without being under attack itself. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed learning about the knight as much as I enjoy it, and I'll see you in the next one.